I came to Cumbria in 2001. Well, I've now been in Carlisle over 20 years. And I came because I was offered a role at the County Council as their first equalities officer for the county. This was post the Lawrence inquiry that was published following the murder of Stephen Lawrence. And it sort of highlighted a whole range of issues and themes and also responsibilities for local authorities as to what to do. County Council did a bit of a review and said, we haven't got a real problem with race, but we still will get somebody in. I remember coming here I asked actually when I got offered the job, I said, is there a mosque here? Can I get halal food somewhere? Or halal meat? And I got a response back saying, no idea. So I thought, right, okay. And it's something that I've worked in rural areas before. Before that, I used to work in Exeter, and I asked the same question, and I was told, yes, there is places, which always helps you in terms of planning where you live and where you move to, whether you move to Carlisle or Scotland or wherever, and work in Cumbria. But I found somewhere there was a mosque and where I can get stuff from. But what was interesting, I moved here around September time, and I came here sort of June, July time to have a look around for accommodation and wandered around. And I went to the mosque to have a look. And lo and behold, I found that there'd been a brick thrown to the window. This was in 2001. But I thought, right, this is going to be an interesting challenge, isn't it, taking up this role in Cumbria. And the first sight I get is going to a mosque, there's a brick through the window. And that carried on over the years. And if you go to the mosque now, you'll find grills over it. And in the last couple of months, there are security guards around the clock outside the mosque because of the riots that happened in August. So, yeah, so that was my first experience. I thought, right, okay, this is going to be a nice challenge, isn't it, to come to Cumbria and pick this work up and my role. So, before I worked in the Southwest on rural racism issues, and it was one of the first projects that came about following a report that the Commission for Racial Equality published in the early 90s around racism in rural areas. And I was the first project officer in the Southwest working for what was then the National Association of Vice Bureau 6 and the Vice Regional Office. So one of the themes that comes through is I've worked on supporting communities and supporting people over the years in what I've done and my youth work background. So that set my scene and really focus on working on rurality issues across not only in the Southwest but beyond as well. And what's interesting is, since that report, there's a bit of academic work going on at the moment at the University of Leicester who are looking at what the situation is around rural racism as we speak. So they're doing a 2-year project at the moment. So having worked in the Southwest and coming to Cumbria, yes, there are similarities, both rural areas, there's lots of challenges. But how do you bridge communities together, and particularly faith communities? I remember in Exeter, I lived next door to a shop that was owned by a seacover. Just across the road there was a mosque, and there were Hindu communities. So there's a whole range of, and Exeter has one of the oldest synagogues in the country as well. So there's a whole range of different faiths, but how do you bring those communities together on an equal level pegging? And that's always a challenge in terms of different communities have different sort of priorities or agendas and what they want to achieve out of it, and how do you then sort of bring some commonalities within those communities? And sometimes it's about bringing them together by their ethnicity, their culture, and sometimes bringing them together by their faith. I went to an event in Cumberland in Workington last year around African doctors and healthcare workers, and there was one in Barrow a few months before that. And what I didn't realise was the number of health and social care workers that are working in this whole Cumberland and West Midlands in the one I went to in Workington, there must have been at least 200 people, all families and so on, working right from Haverick all the way down through Maryport to Carlisle. They tend to be very invisible. And same with Barrow. I went to Barrow and there was about 200 people there. So again, there's a huge diversity of people and communities of different faiths living and working and contributing to the economy, and how we sort of bring that together. And there will be opportunities of bringing that together, but it's finding the right forums. And I remember Cameron Button back sort of almost 15 years ago, we had the Cumbria Interfaith Forum where we did a whole range of activities at Rydal, but probably one of the biggest ones we did was at the Cathedral on Interfaith Week, where we had, I think we sold out a whole range of activities at the Cathedral to celebrate Interfaith Week. But it needs to be sort of back on an equal basis, and something I talked about with Adrian at the last meeting was how do we hold it a neutral venue so there's no power relationships around which faith is bigger or better or not. It's about looking at how we sort of bring equity and inclusion in that. And also going beyond what I call, and it's something that it came out in my youth work days, a person I know called Vipin, who used to work for National Youth Agencies, he wrote a book around that time called Beyond Steel Bats and Samosas. Because in those days as well, there was a whole lot of youth work going on, which was very much about, let's have some food, let's have some music, and we've done our intercultural, multiracial work, interfaith work. But we need to go deeper than that, understand some of the issues that are going on within those communities, but also the communities are facing. So in August, when we had the disturbances around the country, people going to and from the mosque were being spat at, shouted at, because they were Muslim going in and out of the mosque. So it's about thinking, how do we address some of those issues and go into some of those difficult. And these are issues all over the city and county. And I remember going to an event, a refugee event, actually, locally, and somebody coming up to me and my wife, and the first question they asked us was, when did you arrive and where from? So there was an immediate assumption, because I was brown, because my wife was wearing a headscarf, that we were refugees. Not thinking, actually, we've been here for 10, 15 years before that. But immediately that's the first question that was asked by one of the volunteers. And it's, for me, it's that sort of thing, why was that assumption made? Why do you think because you've got a headscarf on? The other thing that commonly happens is we get talked to very slowly because we don't understand English. So it's those sort of things to sort of think about how we sort of understand that. I remember going to a primary school, again, we're about 5 miles out of Carlisle, to do an assembly for 5 minutes on Islam. I started with an opening question around who's a Muslim, and small village primary school, we have all 60 pupils in one group. In an assembly, you don't split them up, so you have everything from a nursery reception right through to year 6. And somebody put their hand up, I went to them, and they turned around and said, Muslims are all bad people. All the teachers and head teachers were all there, their mouths just dropped open. The question for me is, where does that come from? Is it from the parents? Is it grandparents? Is it the media? Just how do you bring those sort of issues and address some of those issues through an educational process in different ways? And again, something I recall, if you still go back to Storm Desmond, it's about 7, 8 years ago, that we were hit with the
9 years ago now.
9 years ago, yeah. That we were hit with the devastating floods across Carlisle and a whole range of other places. The amount of aid that came through from different faith communities at that time, I remember getting called from all these different groups saying, where do we go? we've got a whole van full of donations that we want to bring, whether it's cleaning equipment or food or whatever else. So all these communities, I remember COWC coming in, setting up langars where they cook the food for communities, and emergency workers, Muslim groups coming in doing the same with Hindu groups, a whole range of different groups coming in and engaging. But what came afterwards was some of the hate and some of the abuse that followed. And it's sort of how do you also tackle those sort of challenges and issues that come through from the positivity that we had to bring people together. So we need to explore those power relationships, and we need to explore sort of the good and the bad, and look at mutual values, and also where everybody feels comfortable engaging with each other. And how do we engage with different communities? There's always challenges of how do you get people in, how do you create a safe space for people to come to community events. Because I regularly get sort of people say, well, we held an event but nobody turned up. Well, sometimes it's what time did you hold it? Where did you hold it? Because all those sort of things play a role in a factor in whether people attend or don't attend. I've been fortunate to have been around and lived in a whole range of different places, both in the UK but also been abroad and experienced different cultures and faiths and so on. And you get to experience and learn from those sort of things. You look at some people in Cumbria or Carlisle or around who may have never gone out of town, never been to even Preston. So sort of exploring those sort of avenues and how communities actually get involved. And it's brilliant that the mosque is involved, the imam's involved in the bridging the faith communities, because it's about sort of how you bridge those communities, how do you visit those mosques. We had a Sacre meeting last week, and I took some of the Sacre members to the mosque to again just have a conversation for an hour to understand the mosque. So it's about sort of engaging and exploring different ways of engaging, because that's really important at different times. Because if you hold something at sort of sometimes 4 or 5 o'clock, then that also excludes a whole range of people. We may include carers who won't be able to come, people who work in the nighttime economy won't be able to attend. So it's exploring those sort of issues before. But also we must remember that there's sort of a whole range of other things going on. I know that we have these things designated like Fair Trade Weeks. This month's Black History Month. This week's also Hate Crime Awareness Week. November is Islam Awareness Week. So yes, we can do things for those months and weeks, but it should be sort of an ongoing thing as well. It shouldn't be just sort of pigeonholed into, we'll do Black History and Black History Month, we'll do Islam Awareness Month, we'll do Fair Trade and Fair Trade Week. But fair trade should be something that we do. It should be business as usual. It shouldn't be something that we should be thinking about just on Fair Trade Week, but it should be something that's part of a lifestyle, same with sort of Black history. And same with sort of Islam awareness. And Black history, for me at the moment, is really important, because that's what I'm doing as my sort of postgraduate research project, is looking at sort of particularly racially minoritized history in rural Britain that very few people know about. If you sort of look at just sort of around us, you've got Hatred's Wall, Brough by Sands, where the first African settlement was, 3 AD. How many people know about that? And are we talking about it? Are those organisations highlighting that history and celebrating it? So it's about highlighting some of those. Carlisle and Cumbria has changed. When I came in 2001, there was very little around in terms of communities. Now I sort of go out, and it's very, very different. Not only in Carlisle, but also in the Lake District. Last year, there was a piece of research done by the National Park and the Tourist Board, which showed an increase of about 15% in the number of particularly ethnically diverse visitors. You go in the summer to places like Alderwater, Windermere, you'll see a huge diversity of people coming in from Greater Manchester, Lancashire to visit the lakes. I was out for the last 2 weekends, taking groups out in the lakes 1 week, and was volunteering, and this weekend was walking off from the Cumbria. So there's a lot more people coming through to visit the national park, and then engage with the communities locally as well. Over the summer there was a group of police officers from Scotland and England, Muslim Police Officers Association came and spent a retreat in Wasdale for the weekend. So again, you've got lots of people coming in, and what they did was they travelled in through Carlisle, because it was Friday, prayed at Carlisle Mosque, and then went to Wasdale. So that whole sort of nature of Carlisle and Cumbria is changing in terms of the makeup of the county, in terms of health and social care workers and professionals that are in the area, and the way they're contributing to the community. And I suppose what we need to do is celebrate that diversity that's developing, and also make those communities who are coming in welcome and part of that Cumbrian society, rather than feeling sort of left out and ostracised. And otherwise what will happen is they'll move on and go somewhere else. Same with the health and social care workers. And you've got to think, who is going to provide the health and social care if those health and social care workers don't come to Cumbria or Carlisle to work, and if they don't have a place where they can worship. And it's really positive that now we have, you sort of look around, yes, there's not all faiths not catered for, but there are sort of groups of Hindu communities, Sikh communities, Jewish communities and Muslim communities forming around the county and coming together to celebrate their faith. And how do you then bring them all together to actually celebrate jointly, and making it diverse. And more than ever now, there is that need for bridging those faiths and coming together on a common. And there is, as people said, there is more in common than there is different. It is how do you bring that commonality together, but also have those serious conversations as well, and not to sort of just have sit down, have a chat, have some tea and cake, and then move on, but to actually address some of the issues that people are facing